All right, well, for today's video, I wanted to talk about WWE Backlash 2026, the premium live event that aired on Saturday, May 9th at 6 p.m. Well, let's talk about what's going on here. Some had some strange goings on here. We had a wrestler wasn't expecting this. It looks like we have another wrestler is now gone from the company. So we'll talk about that. It's like, I mean, ever since April 24th. I mean, we're up to We were up to 29 wrestlers that had been released from the company. The most recent ones being on Saturday, May 2nd. We learned about Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods, them being released because TKO wanted to rework their contract. They were telling them that they would either have to take a 50% pay cut or they were going to terminate them. And, of course, this team, the New Day, they didn't want to do that, so they figured, they parted ways with the company. And also we saw JC Mateo and Tongaloa. They were released also on that day. Now we have another one, and this one looks to be a retirement. I wasn't expecting this one. Find out that it looks like Asuka, and she's been there since 2015. It looks like she's now no longer with the company. They're basically saying that she's going to be like semi-retired. And this was her last match, the match that she had against Io Sky. So we'll talk about that. So let's see what all is going on right now here with this. WWE Backlash. It had a 2-hour countdown show, but that did not have any exclusive matches. I mean, it's not like AEW and TNA. There are countdown shows that have a bunch of exclusive matches on there. Didn't have anything on there on WWE's countdown show. Now we have our first match here is Seth Rollins versus Braun Breaker with Paul Heyman. And basically, here we have, it's a situation where it's like, well, just as Seth Rollins, he might have had the match won after doing his finishing move, the curb stomp on Braun Breaker, but here, right at that time, Paul Heyman, he gets up on the ring apron and causes an outside distraction against Seth Rollins, and he distracts the referee. So now, Seth Rollins, he gets out of the ring and he grabs a steel chair and acts like he's going to attack Paul Heyman with the steel chair, but right at this point, that's where Austin Theory and Logan Paul, the current WWE World Tag Team Champions, they come out to try to attack Seth Rollins, but Rollins ends up fighting off both of them with the steel chair. He ends up hitting both Logan Paul and Austin Theory with the steel chair several times. With Austin Theory, he ends up curb stomping Austin Theory's head into the concrete floor, and with Logan Paul, it hits him with the steel chair, and then Logan Paul ends up retreating to the back on his own. And as of this point, we have Seth Rollins. He gets back in the ring. Braun Breaker, he ends up spearing Rollins. Then Braun Breaker goes to spear Rollins again, but Rollins gets a pedigree move on Braun Breaker. Rollins climbs up to the second rope to do like an avalanche there, and but Breaker, he ends up hitting Rollins as he came off the second rope with another spear. And Braun Breaker, then he did a torpedo spear after running the ropes, and then got an underhanded win in the match, after all the distractions that Seth Rollins had to go through. He's fighting off Logan Paul, he's fighting off Austin Theory, he's got, Paul Heyman, doing a distraction in the match. So I'm putting that down as, Braun Breaker won, but it was an underhanded win. And it basically took all these other guys helping him to get that win. Now, Michael Cole, he puts this over as, the biggest win in Braun Breaker's career. So, all right, so here we got match 2. We have a WWE United States Championship match here. It's basically a WrestleMania 42 rematch. We have Sami Zayn versus the current WWE United States Champion, Trick Williams. And Trick Williams, he's out there with famous rapper Lil Yachty. And, well, this match, it goes on for like 12 minutes and 47 seconds. Now, actually, I was going to say the time for the other match, too. The Seth Rollins match versus Braun Breaker, that ran for like 21 minutes and 27 seconds. Okay, but the one here with Trick Williams versus Sami Zayn, this one here, goes for 12:47. And here we find Lil Yachty. He's there. He's causing an outside distraction against Sami Zayn, and that's going on. And when Sami Zayn's going after Trick Williams, then later on we have Lil Yachty. He's causing another outside distraction, and he's distracting the referee. But Sami Zayn, he uses this opportunity to grab Lil Yachty's candy cane kendo stick. It's a kendo stick. It looks like this, large candy cane and all that. And he grabs that and he attacks Trick Williams with the kendo stick. So it's kind of like Lil Yachty's outside distraction. It like backfired. Now later on in the match, Lil Yachty hit Sami Zayn with the candy cane kendo stick. So he's interfering in the match. And then we got later on, Sami Zayn, he wiped out Lil Yachty outside the ring with a haluva kick. However, this ended up backfiring on Sami Zayn. Because when Sami Zayn got back in the ring, Trick Williams got the upper hand, and after doing his finishing move, the trick shot, Trick Williams got an underhanded win. You could say due to Lil Yachty, helping out with the outside interference and the outside distractions and all that. So I don't know. I didn't particularly find this match entertaining, but that was me. Up next, we have, this is kind of a strange match here. They're kind of doing some sort of like paranormal, science fiction nonsense, kind of like TNA likes to be doing as of late, because we have a Danhausen match. This is a strange match here. And we have Hit Wilson and Mike the Miz Mizanin versus Danhausen with his mystery partner. Now, we had seen on SmackDown, they had Danhausen. He was kind of like, it kind of seemed like he was doing the character, acting like the character Dr. Frankenstein. He's in there, he's got his chemistry set up, and he has this booth, it says it's a quote-unquote cloning machine. He's trying to clone his own self, so that he could get a clone of himself to be his tag team partner, because he wasn't having any luck finding a tag team partner to be in this match, So, basically, in this match, we find out who the mystery partner is, and instead of it being like an exact clone of Danhausen, which is what Danhausen was going for, here it turns out it's a midget wrestler, and I think in today's day and age, we're supposed to be calling the midget wrestlers, we're supposed to be calling them quote-unquote little people, and this is it's a famous little person wrestler, and this is actually Mascarita Sagrada, who is a current AAA wrestler, and we'd actually seen Mascarita Sagrada in WWE wrestling from 2013 to 2016 under the name El Torito, and sometimes you would see him in matches against, remember Hornswoggle? He was in matches against Hornswoggle sometimes, and that was how that worked out. So now he's got like little person Mascarita Sagrada from AAA as his tag team partner, and he's dressed exactly, well, not exactly, but he's got the Danhausen face paint and everything like that. So it's like a little version of Danhausen there. And basically this match went on for 11 minutes and 35 seconds. And although it seems like it's a match maybe a lot of people would really be like groaning at, a lot of people wouldn't be real keen on it, they'd be disappointed by it, stuff. It seemed like the longer it went, the more the crowd was getting into it. Like once Danhausen, he opened up the so-called cloning machine, and people found out it was it was like the little person wrestler coming out, and he's like 3.5 feet tall. The audience was like, come on, like you heard people like booing this and everything. But like, as it was going on, like the crowd seemed to get more and more into it and all. And it seemed like actually Mascarita Sagrada, he ended up doing, he was in the match a lot more than Danhausen was. And that's how they had that going. And like, kind of like towards the end, they had Kit Wilson. He ends up grabbing the little person Masquerita Sagrada, and he takes him back to the so-called cloning machine, and he throws him inside the machine. But then that ends up backfiring as the door opens, only to reveal that now we have 6 additional, little people wrestlers coming out, all dressed up like Danhausen with the Danhausen, face paint and everything. So now he's got the 6 little people wrestlers as well as Masquerita Sagrada coming out. They're all attacking Kit Wilson there, and there was even a point where whatchamacallit, they had Masquerita Sagrada, he's going to do like the Danhausen curse, but all of a sudden it's like, Kit Wilson, he pulls out the mirror, so it's like, it's supposed to be like reflecting the curse, and then the curse goes back to Masquerita Sagrada. And next we have another situation later on where Mike the Miz Mizanin, he grabs a fire extinguisher from underneath the ring, and he tries to shoot it at the little people there. But then the thing is, the Mizanin, he's under a curse from Danhausen as the storyline is going. So, when he tries to shoot off the fire extinguisher, nothing happens. And then he kind of like turns it a little bit more towards himself. He ends up shooting himself, in the face with the fire extinguisher, as well as getting Kit Wilson in the face with the fire extinguisher as well. So then basically Danhausen gets the upper hand on Mizanin in the ring. Danhausen pins Mizanin, and right there we have Danhausen and Masquerita Sagrada winning this match here. And basically, like, in the match, they basically, the announcers were just referring to Masquerita Sagrada as quote unquote like little Danhausen. They didn't really acknowledge that he was a famous wrestler, that had been around for a long time in the wrestling scene there. They just called him Little Danhausen. And up next on the show, they plugged they plugged Wave 2 of the new LJN and Mattel wrestling action figures. The ones that look like they're the ones from the 80s. The King Kong Bundy, Jesse the Body Ventura, Ultimate Warrior, and Stone Cold Steve Austin from the 90s. They put them in that set. And talking about how they're being sold in Target in the USA right now. Up next, they had a segment where they were talking about, they announced that AAA, Triple Mania 34, the biggest show of the year for AAA. And they talked about how now this year, for the first time, it's going to happen over the course of 2 nights for the first time. So it'll be Friday, September 11th, 2026, as well as Sunday, September 13th. And the location for the first night of the event hasn't been announced yet, but the second night will be in Mexico City. So I wonder if they're going to make maybe who knows, maybe wonder if they're going to have night 1 in the United States, possibly, who knows, And up next we have match 4. We have Asuka versus Io Sky. This match went on for 18 minutes and 5 seconds. And basically, the crowd, they kept chanting for, as you would expect, the crowd kept chanting, we want Kairi, we want, since Kairi Sane, since she was one of the many wrestlers, one of the 25 wrestlers that they terminated on April 25th, 2025. So basically, but Kairi Sane, she never appeared, and basically, it sounds like a case where, from what I heard, my understanding of it was that, from what I had read, it sounded like Kairi Sane, she had been talking about how she wanted to move back to Japan and all that. And that's probably one of the reasons why the company was like, well, if she really doesn't want to be here, if she wants to move back to Japan and everything like that, we're looking to cut a lot of people, we'll just, we'll let her go. And, within a few days after she was cut from WWE, on April 24th, she had already moved back to Japan and everything. So it sounds like, maybe like she got what she wanted and everything like that. It wasn't like a case of, WWE screwed her over and pulled the rug out from underneath her. It sounded like, I don't know, from what I had heard so far, unless there's other information and stuff, it sounded like she kind of wanted to go back, to her home country and all. But anyway, in this match of Asuka versus Io Sky, Okay, we kept hearing the crowd chanting, we want Kyrie, we want Kyrie. And anyway, towards the end, we have Asuka. She tried, spitting a blue mist into Io Sky's eyes, but Io Sky blocked it all by holding up Wade Barrett's laptop computer. They were both like on the announcer's desk when this happened, and Io Sky, she pulls up Wade Barrett's laptop computer, blocks the whole thing. That Io Sky was trying, or that Asuka was trying to spit it into her face. And then at the end, Io Sky, she had a solid, decisive win here with her finishing move, the over the moonsault. And after the match, both showed each other a huge amount of respect, which I wasn't really expecting to see, because I mean, this was something like that WWE had kept quiet about about Asuka, this being her last match with the company. And it's like, you never see Asuka, acting like this. Asuka, she was like in tears. She kept, kissing and hugging, Io Sky. She was like, basically like from the body language, it's like she was basically saying, hey, it was wonderful working with you. I had a blast, doing this storyline with you. Thank you so much for helping me help do this storyline and everything like that. And basically, you saw like it was an emotional moment between Io Sky and Asuka, and just looking at it from right there, you figure, well, geez, that very well could be Asuka's last match. And Asuka, she basically waved goodbye to the crowd, and the word was that, a bunch of people in the back, they were giving her their goodbyes and everything, and they say, Asuka, she'll be like, I don't know, how would you say that? Like, she'll be like semi-retired. So, I mean, that'll probably be clarified over time. Like, how does she mean that? Like, does that mean she'll move back to Japan and maybe she'll just do, a match like during special occasions here and there, or maybe she might come back to WWE once in a while for a special occasion to do a match. So, not really sure how all that's going to work out, but I wasn't expecting to hear, that it looked like that's Asuka's last match with WWE, at least for a good while, and everything, and she's going to going on to be semi-retired. Well, best of luck, with her, that's for sure. Up next, in the next segment here, we had a few stars from the past, from the 80s, that if you didn't know it was them, if they wouldn't have specifically told you it was them, you never would have known it was them. They were showing Dan Spivey from the 1980s in the crowd, as well as Steve Kern, who went by the name Skinner in WWF at the time. He was doing this gimmick where he was supposed to be like an alligator hunter, and Steve Kern, for most of his career, it seemed like he was always either, like, you're familiar with him for the most part in NWA, but he was even in AWA and even in WCW after he left WWF at the time back in 1993. So you saw both of them. Neither one of them looked anything like they did back in the 90s. Like, Steve Kern, he was there completely clean shaven. In the 80s, he always had a beard, mustache, And anyway, up next, let's see. Then we had John Cena coming out with what he was talking about was the big history-making announcement, And I know there was people online saying, "Oh my God, I bet this is probably just going to be about that Club WWE stuff." But it actually had nothing to do with that. But it was something strange nonetheless. Yeah. Anyway, this was a 10-minute segment with John Cena, and Cena announced that WWE is going to be having a tournament called the John Cena Classic that will feature the best stars of today on the main roster, as well as the best wrestlers of tomorrow, meaning the best of the NXT roster. And the winner of this tournament will be called the John Cena Classic Champion. And Cena said the audience will get the opportunity to vote on who gets crowned the John Cena Classic Champion. And Cena said that even if a wrestler doesn't win their match in the tournament, the audience could still vote for them to be the new champion. And John Cena said that he hopes to see this tournament be done every year, and then said he's like, I'll see you at the John Cena Classic. So it looks like Cena's still going to be involved in WWE television, on at least, while they're doing this tournament. I would guess, coming up in the next few months. So it looks like he's still going to be on television, for a while in the coming months. So that's how all that worked out. So it kind of almost seems like similar to when WWE used to do like the Taboo Tuesday like pay-per-views, where they would try to get the audience to vote on what the stipulations for the matches would be. But they would always do that thing where they would try to steer people a certain direction. So, like they make it kind of obvious, like how they want the audience to vote. They try to really get the audience to vote a certain way. So you wonder if, like, they'll probably do the same thing with this, where they try to get the audience to steer, to try to get them to vote for certain people to be the new champion and all that. But whether or not it'll turn out that way, who knows? But yeah, so that should be kind of strange to see how all that goes. Up next, we had a segment. Michael Cole plugged the Club WWE. And let's see what we had. Also, then we got the 5th match here. And this is the WWE World Heavyweight Championship match here. We have Jacob Fatu versus Roman Reigns, the current WWE World Heavyweight Champion. And the Usos didn't come out or anything like that, to be by the side of Roman Reigns. They made it sound like he told them, don't come out here. He wants it to be just him and Jacob Fatu, and that's it. And in this match, I thought this was the best match on the show. And yeah, I thought this was a pretty violent match that really seemed to, help establish, really make, Jacob Fatu look like a big star that's going to end up eventually winning the World Championship. So, but basically in this match, like, okay, you'd have, around like the midway point, Jacob Fatu, he threw Roman Reigns like through the announcer's desk, and then more towards the end, you had Roman Reigns, he's struggling to really get the upper hand on Jacob Fatu, so he ends up gouging Jacob Fatu in the eyes, and then Jacob Fatu had Roman Reigns in the tongue and death grip when Roman Reigns all of a sudden he pulls a turnbuckle, he pulls one of the top turnbuckle covers off, and then Roman Reigns throws Jacob Fatu like head face first into the exposed turnbuckle, and then spears Jacob Fatu, and then got an underhanded win, you could say, since, okay, he exposed the turnbuckle, threw Jacob Fatu head first into that, and that's after he gouged Jacob Fatu in the eyes, So it's almost like the storyline is like, if he wouldn't have done that, he very well could have lost, because Jacob Fatu really seemed like he had Roman Reigns' number, the way they had all this booked out, and Jacob Fatu came off looking like a star who's really gonna be, at the top of the heap, sooner or later. But it looks like this match almost kind of like they have it in such a way that, like, to set up maybe another match between these two. Maybe these two will face each other at the next match or next pay-per-view at the end of May, like that, a Clash in Italy, or maybe even in SummerSlam. And because after this match, Jacob Fatu, he kept attacking Roman Reigns, and he even attacked the referee and a bunch of WWE officials. They'd come out to try to break it up between the two, and Jacob Fatu, he was just destroying, Roman Reigns, and that's how it was. As basically the show went off the air, and your announcers for the show were Michael Cole and Wade Barrett, and then they did a post show after the pay-per-view, where it was like Roman Reigns, he was talking about how he was so angry about how the match went and everything that, he wants to, they almost made it sound like, he wants to go to management to have Jacob Fatu just thrown out of the company and all that, so yeah, you figure they're not going to do that as a storyline. The storyline will be most likely that, okay, they have a rematch between the two, and to see how all that goes in the future. So anyway, that's basically how that event went, and I guess that's it. That's all I'm going to say about that for right now, and then I probably should get going on some other videos for this channel. So I will say take care, and see you on the next video.